Coming up on the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, Michael and I will get you all of your latest news and information from the state capitol and CDE with an in-depth analysis on how it impacts you. Plus, we are almost at that important date, the May budget revision. We've got our good friend, Dr. Patty Herrera, on the show today to give her predictions on what you may see.
You know it's a good Wednesday when Patty Herrera is here on the
That's
ACSA
right.
Legislative Lunch Break, and that starts right now.
And it's a couple of minutes after 1 o'clock. We welcome you on a Wednesday to the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. I'm Naj and ACSA Senior Director of Marketing and Communications. Michael Kelly, ACSA's new media manager, with us here today in the co-host chair. Michael, people may wonder where Edgar is today, especially since we have Dr. Patty Herrera with us, and Edgar does not miss an opportunity to talk with Patty because of the wealth of knowledge. Folks, we've got photos in from just moments ago. This is Edgar over at Sly Park. He is there for sixth grade trip with his son. Shout out to Sac County Office of Ed and County Supervisor Dave Gordon, who runs the program. Sly Park, kind of this rite of passage for sixth graders here in this 916 area code. All of the students that are in sixth grade somehow find their way up to Sly Park. Michael, this is kind of a completely different thing for you.
I'm from Louisiana. Like, this isn't, maybe that's an indictment on the state of public education in Louisiana, but this wasn't a thing for me growing up. You had to go to private school if you wanted to go do that stuff. So good for Edgar. And look, selfishly, I'm excited that, you know, of all the shows that I've executive produced, you know that Patty is one of my favorites. And so the fact that I get to be in the anchor chair for today's episode, I'm thrilled. Edgar, take all the time you need, bud.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Patty Herrera will join us in just a couple of moments. Want to say hello to some of our viewers. Neri Pais is with us, Rusty Gordon with us as well, Amy Wen Hernandez and Julie Vitale. So good to have all of you guys with us again. We're going to dig deep into the state budget and the May budget revision in just a couple of moments. Want to get you a couple of news stories right here, and we'll start with an update on that 60-day substitutes bill, AB 2490. It's now heading to the Assembly Appropriations Committee after passing through the Assembly Education Committee. Now, the bill was significantly amended to more closely align with the draft regulations that the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing recently approved. Those amendments are now in the process of public comment. Of note, the CTC's draft regulations do not provide for continuity for special education environments, and co-sponsors, including ACSA, Michael, certainly against this. On April 16th, the CTC said they would change their oppose unless amended position to seeking amendments, but there's still a lot in front because there's opposition from labor and civil rights groups. So we'll keep you updated on that. Also want to talk about a great ACSA event that happened just last week. That's our 2026 ACSA Legislative Action Days. This is our annual Legislative Action Days event. Our members met with lawmakers and their staff to advocate on key issues, including funding, continuity in the classroom with the 60-day substitute legislation that we just talked about, and strengthening and streamlining accountability. The event also included, you saw a video of that, fireside chat with Assemblymember Darshana Patel from down in Southern California, and the presentation of our 2026 ACSA Friend of Education Award. That honor went to Assemblymember Alex Lee, representing District 24, which includes portions of Alameda and Santa Clara counties up here in Northern California. So great event there. I did mention that substitutes bill twice in our opener. We will certainly be keeping tabs on that, especially now, as we had mentioned that there has been some type of an exclusion that does not provide continuity for special education environments, that according to CTC draft regulations. So we'll keep you updated on that.
And credit to Dawn Hubble as well, who has done incredible work. We had a chance to talk with her at ACSA Legislative Action Days. She has been up in Sacramento testifying, and I would imagine will continue to do so.
Yeah, we'll continue to check in on that, folks. We are just a couple of weeks away from the May budget revision. This is where we move from the budget proposal that the governor had in January, work through everything that lawmakers have been doing since that proposal, and now take into consideration the revenues, the resources, the expenses, and where we're at as far as that budget is concerned. So joining us now, one of our favorite guests, Dr. Patty Herrera, President, School Services of California, a member of our Five Timers Club here at the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Patty, so great to have you back here with us. Let me just ask, up until now, through what you have been seeing in hearings, what you've been getting as far as feedback is concerned, how would you describe the legislature's budget approach? Are leaders kind of signaling some greater caution and fiscal restraint right now, especially with the cost of everything going up, that being very much on the mind of voters?
Yeah, I do think that the legislature, the Senate, and the Assembly, at least some of the budget leaders, are signaling to their members that this is going to be a pretty lean year, especially on the non-education side of the budget. They don't have the Proposition 98 protection that we do in TK through 12 and community colleges, and they recognize the impact of that. So they are signaling that they could be facing a pretty difficult budget conversation and negotiations with the governor. However, in terms of like real terms, are we seeing anything, in terms of legislative proposals where they're proposing significant reductions to address the impending budget deficits from the state of California? The answer to that for me is no. We don't see any clear evidence that they're considering cuts. And in fact, the Senate is considering new taxes and whether or not they're going to have the political appetite for that. I do think one of the reasons why we're not seeing serious dialogue around reductions in the budget is because we have a pretty important event coming up in November, and that's called the elections. And no lawmaker wants to have their name attached to cutting a program that would be significant for their community. The governor, I think you guys probably know this, and I would be surprised if you guys didn't talk about it, but the governor had signaled to the legislature that they better be prepared for some difficult conversations in the budget.
Patty, you alluded to it earlier, Prop 98 and the funding that remains in limbo as a result of the governor saying that he is planning to withhold $5.6 billion. Certainly something that has raised a lot of red flags here with ACSA, but also in the broader education community. The Senate, meanwhile, saying that they're going to reject that withholding proposal. Make this make sense for us, Patty. How does this play out?
I love the Senate's proposal. I mean, as a Proposition 98 geek, like when the Senate came out with their proposal, I was like, oh, this is a really politically savvy way to address the concerns. And really what the Senate is doing is they borrowed from the governor's playbook from 2024 when he reached an agreement with the California Teachers Association over that very, very spirited debate about how to treat Proposition 98, where basically they're like, you know what, we know we owe you guys this money. We'll go ahead and give that to you guys. We're actually going to allocate $5.7 billion out to you guys. The state is cash rich, right? We have plenty of cash in the state coffers, but we don't have the capacity in the state budget to pay for that $5.6 billion. And instead, the Senate's like, you know what? We did this once before, where we, gave education the money that we're constitutionally obligated to do, but we don't account for it for the budget impact or the state budget costs until the future. So they're kicking the can down the road. And the reason why I kind of flippantly said, I like it is because, of course, we have concerns about the state of California holding back billions of dollars from our local leaders who could really use those dollars for their students and the programs that they offer their communities. So in that way, I favor the Senate's approach to this, but of course, it has some long-term implications on the state budget. So, and I can't. I'm going to tell you that I'm sure that the Legislative Analyst Office is going to be critical about it, because the Legislative Analyst Office doesn't just look at Proposition 98; they just look at the state budget in total.
Yeah. I was wondering at what point we would hear the phrase "kicking the can down the road," Patty. It only got to question number 2 before we heard that. You did just moments ago talk about the legislative analysts. I want to talk to you about the LAO recommending a 2.5% COLA. The governor proposed a 2.41% COLA. Where do you project this final COLA landing? And is there any concern right now that the other budget pressures could impact the state's ability to fully fund it?
Great question. So let me see if I can answer this in sequence. Invite me back tomorrow and we will have the hard COLA for you. Okay.
We'll do 2 legislative lunch breaks in 1 week. Don't test us, Patty.
Yeah.
So tomorrow, the federal government will release the last data point that we need to actually compute the statutory COLA. So I can tell you right now that we have 7 of the 8 data points available to us that the federal government has already released. With the 7 of the 8 data points, COLA is calculating at 2.52%. So the governor's 2.41% in January is low. Probably the LAO's 2.51% is also low. There's many ways to project or calculate a cost of living adjustment with a data point missing. But we use this method where we just look at the index across the period that computes the COLA. And if we were to do that and apply the average change in the index over the time, COLA would calculate at 2.71%. So we think it's going to be closer to 2.7.
Okay.
But call me back tomorrow and I'll tell you.
Now you're saying 2.7. You just said 7 of 8 data points in, and you've got a 2.52. Now you're saying once that last data point comes in, we could be talking about 2.72.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Michael, you heard her just say that. That's the prediction. So I'm putting that one down right now.
I mean, Rusty Gordon's second comment in the show said, "Show me the money." Patty Herrera doing very much that 12 minutes into this broadcast.
Okay, and I think that you had 2 parts to that question, and the second part to that question, Naj, was: is there anything that would threaten the ability of the state to fund the COLA, right? Because we all know that we live and die by the cost of living adjustment, because it's really what drives our ability to fairly compensate our staff who are so dedicated to supporting our students, but as well as maintain our current level of the programs that we offer to our students. I will say that there should be no reason why the state of California cannot support even a 2.71% COLA. For every percentage point that COLA goes up, it's $500 million. It's about, I think it's $500 million. Don't quote me on that. More in Proposition 98. We should have the capacity in Proposition 98 to pay for that COLA. What that could mean is that we have less capacity to fund some of the other priorities, ongoing costs. And so you guys might remember in January, the governor he didn't have a lot of ongoing proposals. It was the LCFF, it was increasing the base rate for special education, $1 billion in community, the Community Schools Partnership Program, and then a modest investment to stabilize ELOP. And, it may be that the state might have to make some adjustments downward to support the LCFF, but I do think that I'd be surprised if there wasn't consensus in the education community that the number 1 priority would be to fully fund LCFF. But that said, I just want to highlight this. The Senate's revenue estimates that they came out with I think it was a week and a half ago, they actually think that Proposition 98 is going to increase by $2 billion more in 26-27 than the governor's January budget. If that's the case, and it looks to be promising, state revenue trends look to be promising, there should be no problem funding a full COLA, funding community schools, funding the increase to AB 602 base rates, I think we have the capacity to do it all.
This is really good news, Patty. I wasn't expecting this.
Gordon asked, I'm just kowtowing to it.
Rusty Gordon is so excited about what you just said. I can guarantee Sheldon Smith is saying the exact same thing.
This is true. You alluded to it earlier with ELOP. The governor proposed nearly $62 million to set a minimum tier 2 rate for the program at $1,800 up to $2,750 if there are available program funds. LAO saying pump the brakes here a little bit. You say what, Patty?
I say this is a good proposal. Yeah. The governor's proposal to stabilize rate 2 it's essential for districts that get rate 2 funding under ELOP, because what these districts have been experiencing is through no fault of their own, their year over year ELOP dollars have been diminishing, and yet they have this expectation to continue serving at the same level that they served in the prior year. And so the governor is just responding to calls from the field to stabilize districts that receive rate 2 dollars. And I think the LAO might be critical because there's a guaranteed, minimum amount, and then you can go up to a certain amount of money. Right now, as the program stands right now, there's no guaranteed minimum. So at least, for our local educational leaders, at least we can rely on a minimum level of funding based on our local factors of student attendance and unduplicated pupil percentage and things like that, right? Things that go into developing the allocation formula. So I actually think it's a really good thing for school districts, and it's a modest investment. It's I think the governor measured it at $62 million. That may change with the May revision just because of changes in ADA, updates to ADA, but it's a modest investment in Proposition 98.
Dr. Patty Herrera from School Services of California with us here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. If you have any questions for Patty, go ahead and put those into the chat. We'll try and tackle some of those before the end of our show. Patty, as you know, many districts have been at the bargaining table since January as part of CTA's We Can't Wait campaign. Agreements have been reached. We know that. But because of economic uncertainty at that state level and the threat of this Prop 98 withholding of funds, should there be some concern about long-term fiscal instability?
Yes. Especially with some of the settlements that we've seen districts reach who have been part of the We Can't Wait campaign. And I'm just going to call out, districts like San Francisco Unified and Oakland Unified. The question, and Contra Costa Unified, the question is, can they really afford these settlements that they've entered into? And I'll just tell you, we at School Services, we question the affordability of that. And it's not necessarily the fluctuation in revenues in Proposition 98, Naj, or even the $5.6 billion withholding. For us, it's the longer term undercurrent of declining enrollment and what that means for school districts' local control funding formula dollars just moving into the future. We know that our friends at the Department of Finance do not see an end to this chronic decline and stubborn decline in student enrollment through late 2040s. And districts, there's a direct impact on year over year funding that districts get because of that trend that they don't control, right? And so it's not necessarily about what's happening to the guarantee or even politically what's happening to the guarantee year over year. It's these longer term trends in student enrollment and the impact that has on long-term revenues for our friends locally. And because of that, assuming that there are districts most districts in California are in declining enrollment, you can be certain that their year over year revenues are going to continue to decline. How are they going to be able to afford these settlements without making significant budget adjustments? And what I mean by that is if they're going to be able to afford these settlements, they're going to have to afford them through making reductions in their budgets or cutting positions. And that's difficult at the local level, as you all know. None of us want to do that. But otherwise, how are you going to afford it if year over year your revenues are declining?
Mm-hmm.
You said to prepare for potentially up to a 2.7% COLA. Timothy Golden in the chat saying he's holding out for 2.75.
I saw that. I saw that.
Timothy,
no promises.
Let's just be happy with 2.7 for right now. Maybe we get to 2.75. I'm all for it. May revision due out by May 14th from Governor Newsom. What's one area of the education budget that you're optimistic about, Patty? What's another that school districts should perhaps prepare for a little bit of disappointment?
I'm going to say on this one, it's the same thing, one and the same. Optimistic about revenues, and we should be cautious about revenues. And what I mean by that is we are going to see a surge of one-time dollars come into Proposition 98 because current revenues for the current year are outperforming the governor's January estimates. So we're going to see billions of dollars more in one-time money coming into Proposition 98. So we're gonna enjoy that. Hopefully we'll enjoy that, and hopefully the governor doesn't balloon his $5.6 billion withholding to a $10 billion withholding. But when we look at Proposition 98 growth in the longer term, I think we need to be concerned about revenues in the state of California, not just because of, the economic cycle could change, but also because we do have this, we do have the expiration of Proposition 30 and 55 taxes looming out at the end of 2030. And if we don't replace that, that could make Proposition 98 revenues very vulnerable in the future. And the budget pressures that our lawmakers are feeling on the non-education side of the budget, I also think is going to continue to make Proposition 98 vulnerable.
Patty, you did talk earlier about community schools briefly. I want to have this question. It comes in from community schools. What about community school funding? How will that look for the next school year? Will it be expanded to more, or will there be more funding?
Oh, that's a great question. I wish I could call on my colleague, Leilani Aguinaldo. She is really watching this issue very closely. I do think that there's general consensus between the three parties in negotiation. And what I mean by that is the governor, the assembly, and the Senate, that there's a commitment to fund community school partnership programs because of the important service that they provide to the students and their families in their community. I haven't heard a lot of concern or even debate or disagreement about the governor's proposed $1 billion investment. And again, I just want to highlight that I do think that that Proposition 98 can afford for the state of California to commit to $1 billion to partner with local resources to keep those schools vibrant and available to their local communities. I don't know how much more beyond the $1 billion investment that Proposition 98 would be able to afford. We're going to see a higher cost of LCFF potentially because of the higher cost of living adjustment. And I do think that, if there's even more capacity within ongoing funding in Proposition 98, I think maybe some people would like to see an even higher boost in the base rates for special education, but while maintaining that commitment for community schools. So I think it's just a matter of our, where do we want to see these dollars, these limited dollars deployed for school districts. But I don't think the governor's proposal, that minimum $1 billion proposal, I don't see that as being vulnerable through budget negotiations. Some of the rules may change as the legislature and the governor negotiate some of the rules around those dollars.
Cool. Patty, to what extent do you see political dynamics influencing education dollars this year and perhaps next year as well?
I think that two things come to my mind. One is, I think I've said this quite a few times on the broadcast today, but I think we in education forget that there's a whole other budget conversation happening in Sacramento that doesn't involve education, or at least not TK through 12 and community college education. Our friends in CSU and UC they're on that other side of the budget where they are staring down some really difficult fiscal constraints. And I think that especially with a looming election in November, when lawmakers do not want to make difficult budget decisions that result in reductions in services and programs that are really important to their local communities, I think it does create an environment where the protections of Proposition 98 could become porous. Right? We're already seeing it with the governor's $5.6 billion withholding. There's a reason why the governor is proposing that, and that's because the state is would be using the $5.6 billion in our cash to pay for something on the non-98 side of the budget. So we have our constitutional protection, but that protection, I think it's important to acknowledge that the state is very creative about finding some ways to kind of penetrate that protection, if you will.
There are two questions that I want to make sure that we get to you, Patty. And so I'll give you 30 seconds on each. Scott Carroll asks about that potential bill that would change the funded enrollment window to 5-year average instead of 3. Are you hearing anything with respect to that?
The Schultz bill, yes. It got a great hearing. I do think that there's some sympathy around this. It was a really creative, it's a creative alternative to a bill from last year where there was a member of the assembly who just wanted the state of California to do like what we would call J13A protections for communities that saw sudden drops in their attendance because of immigration enforcement actions in their communities, and the governor vetoed that bill. So Assemblymember Schultz out of Burbank came and said, okay, we understand, but you know what? My community and other communities in California are still feeling the effects of this. We don't know how long this is going to go. And so in the very least, we'd like you to extend to add looking at the average of 5 years of ADA, to help protect against this ADA, these hopefully temporary drops in student attendance. I think it's being favorably received in the assembly. People are not looking at it as the panacea to the problems, but I think it's getting some favorable attention in the legislature. My question is it going to get favorable review by the administration if that bill should go all the way to the governor's desk in the fall?
And let me ask one more. Our good friend Jason Angle asked, last year the legislature passed a one-time increase in CTIG funding from 300 to 450 million in 26-27. Is there any talk or chance of them doing this again for 27-28? Anything you could tell us about that, Patty?
For 27-28, I would hate to. I know that's just a year away, but that seems like eons away from here. Yeah. And I would hate to make any predictions this far away from 27-28. It just depends on how Proposition 98 looks at that time.
Yeah. Okay.
Lobby. If that's your priority, you got to go lobby.
All right. So, Michael, traditionally, when we do this show before the May revision, we take note of the predictions. So I have them right here. Patty has predicted a 2.72% COLA.
2.71.
Hold on. 2.71. We should have the ability to fund it. And as the old journalist did years ago on an election broadcast, Tim Russert, where he wrote Ohio, Ohio, Ohio. I've written revenues. Things to be excited about, things to be worried about, all about revenues.
And Jason Angle's a betting man here. He's saying he's going to take the over.
Yeah.
Can I?
Does Kalshi have bets on the COLA right now?
Can I ask for 15 seconds?
Yes.
And because I
you can have all the time you want, Patty.
Because you guys are my people. So here's the Senate came out. What's not getting a lot of attention in the Senate's proposal is their proposal to shift preschool. Well, we think it's childcare into Proposition 98 and the umbrella of Proposition 98. I just want to say, for the record, I think that we should all scrutinize this proposal, and I think that we should be wary about it, because there is a big effort to try to increase the slots in preschool. Noble effort, I get it. But if they move childcare into Proposition 98, and the state of California decides to grow childcare, it's going to become a cost to us in Proposition 98. So it would start to consume more of our guarantee, and then it's going to displace other education priorities that we want, including fully funding a statutory COLA. I know I took up more than 15 seconds. I'm sorry. But I think we all should really pay attention to that, scrutinize it, and decide whether or not this is something that we would support.
All right. Dr. Patty Herrera, president at School Services of California, bringing us our predictions for the May revision. Patty, always great to have you on this show. I can guarantee, Michael and I talked about it earlier, your Five Timers Club robe is probably going to end up being like a 10 timers robe by the time you get here. So watch for a box arriving by
the robe is coming. That is, if you want anything from this show, your robe is coming.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm still waiting for my ACSA cards, but
I know. We'll get our team on that one as well. Patty, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And folks, if you like what you've seen here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, we invite you to like us and subscribe to us on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. When you subscribe to us on YouTube and you turn on your notifications, you'll get instant alerts when we're about to come on the air with breaking news. Then, of course, reminders about our regularly scheduled Wednesday broadcast. Also, if you have great stories happening in your school communities, we want to tell those stories too. Send in your news releases, your talking points, and your photos to Michelle Carl at mcarl@acsa.org. I really wish we had video of Edgar going down one of those like rope slides or something like that at sixth grade camp. So next time, Michael, he's got to tell us all of the stories.
Look, he's had some injuries in the last couple of years.
Oh, that's true.
So we got to be really careful with that guy. He's getting a little bit more fragile, much like your vision.
Yeah. Oh, see, I knew it was going to happen. Folks, thanks so much for joining us here on the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Remember, we are live and interactive Wednesdays here on ACSA Facebook, ACSA YouTube, and ACSA LinkedIn. Have a great rest of the day and rest of the week, and we'll see you next time.